Oh wow, that is so deep. Okay. Hey guys, so welcome to today's video. Today's topic is going to be a little bit different just because I've decided that I kind of want to just share a bit more of my life. I kind of want to share a bit more of different content. So I'm thinking I'll introduce a lot more of the topics that I want to share in terms of just stuff I enjoy. And today's video is actually about a new recipe that I have tried. So I have my standard brownie recipe that I love and that I will eventually share with you guys, but I tried this recipe recently and I loved it. So I've actually been meaning to try out a new brownie recipe, and I was looking around everywhere for a particularly fudgy brownie. So the brownies that I do have, they're more of just a standard brownie with like a frosting on. These brownies are fudgy, ooey-gooey amazingness. So if that's something you're interested in, then do stay tuned for that recipe. As you can see, I am not wearing that much makeup. I've got some leftover mascara, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, I think I'm actually just getting a lot more relaxed with you guys. I hope you don't mind. I guess the point is that I actually want to start sharing more videos where I kind of just share with you guys stuff that I enjoy doing in my day-to-day life, and baking is one of them. I love to bake. For me, baking is kind of like an outlet. Like I enjoy it. It's something I really enjoy doing. It's become somewhat of a hobby for me. I started actually baking when I was 12, and the first thing I made was like a coffee caramel chocolate cake, and it was incredible. And I think the thing about baking that fascinated me at the time is there was this series called Desperate Housewives, and one of the housewives, her name was Brie, and she was always baking stuff, and I was like, I want to bake stuff, you know, like those muffins always looked so good. And so I got into baking and I actually enjoyed it so much. I think just because you're making something so yummy and so good out of nothing, like all of the ingredients that you use are nothing, and then you make this incredible thing. And I think that's something that's always fascinated me. I love to bake. I love to make things from scratch, and I promise you, if you make these brownies from scratch, you will never buy box brownies again. It's so much better. The quality is so much better than like anything you can really buy, and it's a lot cheaper as well. So I mean, you could either pay like 40 bucks for a brownie at a shop, or you could make an entire batch for much less. So these particular brownies go very well with ice cream. And in South Africa, we're about to go into winter, but that's never really bothered me. I'm someone that can gladly eat ice cream during winter. And these brownies go well on their own as well, you know, so you can have them on their own, you can have them with ice cream, you can have them however you want. I definitely do recommend trying it with ice cream just so you can understand what I'm saying. This recipe is so simple and so easy. It's usually ingredients that I just have in my cupboard because I tend to bake quite a lot. I definitely recommend that you give it a try, and let me know in the comments or send me a picture on Instagram if you have made them. I'd love to see them. So yeah, guys, here's the recipe. Okay, so you want to start by lining your baking pan with some baking paper, parchment paper, whatever you've got. So basically, I just used my basic brownie tin, my square tin, and then I cut the paper so that it fits perfectly at the bottom. These brownies are quite fudgy and gooey, so they are going to stick to the pan. So yeah, do make sure that you leave some edges so that when you need to lift the brownies out of the tin, you can do that easily. Okay, so then I'm going to start by measuring out the butter. So I use Stork baking margarine. Yeah, so I'm going to show you that now. So yeah, you can use butter, you can use anything really that you want to use, whether that's baking margarine or butter. And then I'm measuring out about 170 grams of butter. You can also measure this in cup measuring, so that would be 3/4 of a cup of butter. And then I'm going to put that in the microwave because it needs to be melted, okay? So you're going to take it out in between, give it a bit of a mix, and then put it back in the microwave until it's fully melted. And then I'm going to measure out the cocoa. So I'm going to measure out approximately 75 grams. Again, you can measure this out with cup measurements. So that would be 3/4 of a cup of cocoa. I just use the scale because for me that's just a bit more accurate in terms of volume. Okay, and then you mix that into the melted butter. So yeah, give it a mix, 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 mix. Okay, and then I'm gonna measure out the brown sugar. So the measure for this will be 280 grams of sugar, otherwise 1.5 cups of sugar. So yeah, I'm just measuring that out and then trying to make it perfect. Essentially, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Yeah, brown sugar because I mean I've got the basic home brand, quite basic. So then you're going to mix that into the cocoa and butter mix, and I recommend that you try and mix it in just so that it kind of dissolves the sugar a little bit. For me, it didn't really dissolve all of it. I don't think it ever will. It's quite a thick mixture. And then I'm basically just going to add eggs. So I'm just going to go get the eggs. You're going to need about 3 eggs for this. So what you want to do is you want to add the eggs 1 egg at a time. Okay, so you're going to break the 1 egg in. Please make sure you don't have any eggshells. That's what I'm busy doing there. And then you're just going to mix it in to kind of loosen the mixture, and then add the other eggs 1 at a time. I almost added the second one, but put it back, good. Okay, so you're going to mix the second egg in, give it a good stir. Make sure that you get the mix at the bottom of the bowl as well. If you want to use a scraper for that, then you can also do that. So then you mix in the third egg, give it a good stir. And then I'm gonna get the vanilla, I believe. Yes, so vanilla essence or vanilla extract, and the measure for this was 1.5 teaspoons. So you want to add that to the mixture and then really give it a very good mix because you want the vanilla to get all over the mixture. So I'm mixing it in, going for it, doing great. And then the next thing I'm going to do is measure out the flour. So normal cake flour. So I don't add any baking agent, and I think that's what makes the brownies super fudgy. So I'm measuring out 96 grams of flour, otherwise 3/4 of a cup. And you kind of want to be accurate with this because if you put too much flour, then the brownies will not be as fudgy as you want them to be. So make sure you add the exact amount of flour because you don't want these brownies to be cakey. And then another thing I added, which you have to add, please don't ignore it. Salt brings out the flavors in the actual brownies. So it's 1/4 of a teaspoon, but I did heap it a little bit just because the brownie that the recipe that I'm using for the brownies, I had to adapt just because I wanted to make a bigger batch than the brownies originally offered. So yeah, you don't have to sift it or anything. Definitely try out the mixture on the whisk at this point. It would be a sin to not taste it. Okay, and then I basically just dump that in. And then I recommend that you try to stir it in a way that you kind of get all the mixtures. So there might be some mixture like at the bottom and on the sides. And if you avoid that, then it's just going to be a random patch of flour. So try to make sure you mix everything in. You can actually grab a scraper like I do and then just scrape down the sides to make sure that you combine all the flour. And if you wanted to add any nuts or any chocolate chips at that point, then that's what you could do. So you'll see the mixture is quite thick and quite difficult to spread. You might have to hold the paper down like I'm doing just because it's a super, super thick mixture. But you want it to be thick and gooey because that's eventually what will make a very ooey-gooey brownie at the end of it. So yeah, you want to spread that in, make sure it gets to all of the edges and make sure that it's kind of evenly spread out. And then if you want to add chocolate chips, that is what I am about to do. So definitely clean as you go, just because you know you don't want to make your life difficult later. So that's what I was doing, and getting the chocolate. So I use plain dairy milk chocolate. I find that it's just the best chocolate for me. It has that plain chocolate taste. So yeah, you're gonna cut that up into chunks or tiny, tiny pieces depending on what you want. I generally just cut them in half the one way and then in three the other way, so that it makes like even chunks, and then I spread it over the top. But what I do is I shove a few of them into the mix so that it will be in the middle of the mixture, not just on top, and then sprinkle that little bit over, and then this will go into the oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. And when you take it out of the oven, it will be about 22 minutes. For me, it took 23 minutes. And what you want to do is, when you check that it's cooked, just make sure that the center is just set. So it mustn't be completely solid, it must be just set. And what I'm going to do is grab the edges of the paper and straighten it and then lift it out. So this can be pretty difficult to do if you're a beginner. Like I said, I have been baking for quite some time, so I'm quite used to it. So then you want to let it cool completely to room temperature. If you can't do that, then I recommend putting the brownies in the fridge for at least an hour before you cut it up. Reason being, you want it to set completely before you cut it up into pieces. So I cut it into, I guess, half and then half and then half, and then I do the same thing with the other side. So I ended up with 16 pieces, but you can cut it however you find suitable. So that's me just cutting it up, and then I'm going to show you guys how incredible they look. Oh my gosh, look at this, look at that. Do you see that ooey-gooey? Do you see that? Like, oh my word. And then the chocolate chips on top can be a little bit crunchy, and it just adds that texture. So here's a centerpiece, just so you can see the ultimate fudgy. Yes, guys, this is the stuff that we need, right? This is the ultimate treat, you know? I mean, you don't want to try low-fat brownies, you know? They're just not worth it. You want that good stuff. So, yeah, guys, I definitely recommend that you give this a try. Let me know if you do, and thank you for watching, guys.